So today, Astaroth was kind enough to describe to me the Tree of Life, the Sephirot, as the creative process. And, I knew that this is what it referred to, though I was more interested, I think, in planetary magic at the time. So I just sort of integrated the Tree of Life as a diagram to, do some light meditations on it with a little sprinkling flavoring of Kabbalah, but I didn't know like a ton about it. Also, I think it's helpful to understand that Saturn is it's part of the highest triangle. Krishna says of the planets, I am Saturn. So I think that's very helpful to understand. And then also understanding that, like, I think it's Sun, Jupiter, and Mars are another triangle, but getting a sense of levels. I was also focusing on the path of the two pillars, just going straight up the pillars, basically. So there was that, but he explained to me from 1 to 10 how it works. So Keter is like an idea. It's like the ideal. It's the seed. It's the concept, which Keter actually means seed, I believe, if I recall correctly. And then Uranus is like that the seed is opening, and the idea is sort of enriching itself just through the process of existing. And then Saturn is like, it's becoming more, I think this is where it starts to become more mind than, because the seed is just, it's more almost spiritual, what's like, I might have a concept in my head, but that concept will naturally sort of expand, and you have to give it time to expand, and that's Uranus, I forget what it's called on the Tree of Life. And then third it gets to Saturn, or I forget what Saturn's called, Bina, and Bina, it's like this is where it starts to become more mental, sort of have its own like rules and particulars. Like if you have an idea for a story, there's the original concept, then the concept sort of grows, and you can relate it to other concepts and things like that, and then it's like you make an outline or something of a story, or you start to do more like conceptual work, like or concept art, or it starts to take on maybe not so much concept art, but like it's taking a real mental form, even though it doesn't have a material form yet. And then so crossing the abyss, you can also with an idea you have to cross the abyss downwards, and what that does is that's like the bridge from concept to reality, to doing actual work, to producing actual things, and so when you cross the abyss, then it's Jupiter. It's Jupiter, Mars. So Jupiter, I was a little bit confused with what he had to say about Jupiter, but it seemed to be, and I always get the sense that Jupiter is just like the lower octave of Uranus, in a way. Like they're very, very similar because they're both about manifesting. Really, everything on the Pillar of Joachim, the Pillar of Mercy, is to some extent manifesting. It's just Venus. It's a very you know, materialized manifestation of like comfort and luxury and stuff. Jupiter's more grand. Jupiter's more big ticket items, I feel like, and Uranus is more like almost cosmic. It's very high-minded, but I haven't Uranus. The generational planets haven't really opened to me. I've taken a peek at Pluto, you know, in, like on the astral plane and stuff, and what I saw there kind of creeped me out a little bit, and was just a little bit something I can't get my head around yet. Anyways, so yeah, I think Jupiter is like that. There's a second unraveling, there's a second expanding of the thing after there's some like the concept, just for being a concept, has some Uranian expansion just from, you know, being realized as, in the mind as a concept, and then you know, just that which readily sprouts from the seed of the idea of the concept of, you know, the soul of whatever it is. And then Jupiter, it's more like then the spiritual seed then begets, like, through Saturn, a mental seed. And between the three, the seed, this sort of a larger seed is then realized in the mind. And through so through the mental expansion of it, through Bina, through Saturn. Saturn's making it mental. It's got rules. It's got direction. It's locked in a way. It's particular. And then it goes to, and then Jupiter expands from that. So the and I think in this, it kind of feels like Jupiter and Saturn are sort of working together to think about what is the expansion of it. You know what I mean? To define the rules of it, to define the nature of it, the facets and everything. But I feel very much in this case that, see, I don't really see Jupiter as much as the lawmaker, but I think when you have a bottom going, if you have an upcoming spirituality and an upgoing spirituality of Malkuth to Keter, so you're going from Malkuth, what is, and trying to discover what is the seed of things, what is the light. You know, I think that then Jupiter is more powerful. Probably that's why, but I have more of a downgoing spirituality of Keter to Malkuth. That I have the concepts, but materializing it is complicated. So I think in that way my spirituality is like entirely opposite, completely opposite. So that means that Saturn, for me, it's like Saturn and Jupiter almost switch places compared to the way other people, you know, would kind of, the way that they would grapple with it. Like, because that, because Saturn's supposed to be like the taskmaster, the, sort of the hard ass. I don't really get that from Saturn that much. I think Saturn's just very, it's very plain of mind. It doesn't care about vibes as much. I find that very liberating. But I think it's more advanced than vibes. It's more advanced than its mental body, more than like emotional, just emotional noise or something. It's concept. I was talking about Saturn and Jupiter. So Saturn, I think Jupiter in our time is exalted above Saturn because it's more close to the material, and people don't really understand the ethereal so much culturally. You know, maybe some secret society people do, but in general, people aren't really, you know, attuned to that world basically. But I would say Saturn in all cases, and if we look at it through like Hinduism, it's for sure more significant than Jupiter, but Western spirituality, it's like Zeus is Jupiter. So I think that's interesting. I think Jupiter also does help with manifesting materials. Like I've seen that in my own life a little bit, of like just this general manifestation thing of like the tools are there to make something. The pieces come together. It's not like, whereas Venus, it's like, oh, I want, friends, I want love, I want wealth. Venus is even more crystallized. Of course, all these planets have their own energies and own areas, and each one is their own, basically, whole world. That's not really. It's more like this is the tree of life, though. I think is a very powerful way to look at it. That has a lot of there's a lot of good to it, basically. There's a lot of depth to it. You can look at it and kind of see. You can see that it does produce the way that it kind of says it. It acts that way. I think that the Tree of Life isn't perfect. I think it's an interesting way to conceptualize it. I don't know if it's exactly perfect, or I don't think any mind map like that is gonna completely comprehend the planets, but it's pretty good. Moving on to Mars. Mars is then the drive to do the. I think Mars represents the work and the will to do the work, especially the will, I think. But that Martian drive in general. Then we move on to Sun. Now here I want to draw an interesting connection that I hadn't realized before, is that, well, I just learned this recently, that Nergal was considered an aspect of Shamash. Nergal, the Babylonian war god, as compared to Shamash, the Babylonian sun god. I think it's Babylonian and not Sumerian. I don't know, one of those. They're pretty similar, I think. Which is interesting because the Martian drive, I notice, is often closely related to the ego. And I think this is more the West. It's the way it's baked into the Western mind as well. I think that the Babylonians were quite a Martian people, and so that was close to their core identity, which is the core identity is the sun. And yeah, that's the ego. There's a few places I could go with talking about the ego of it, but ego is also related to the work of it. That which is seen, that which is on the surface, which is surfacing. The radiance of it. At the same time, sun is again the concept. It's again all of that into the sun is the is another seed, but it's like the full seed in a way. And then after sun, it's Venus and Mercury, which are Venus is the manifestation of it. Mercury, the alchemy and the alchemization of it in the material world. Of course, something has to be manifested before it's alchemized on that level. Although, a magician alchemizes things mentally earlier in the process, but that's not really the same kind of alchemy that. That's not the mercurial alchemy, which is very particular, taking things that are and changing them. And you could see all of this as having materialized after crossing the abyss, and that these are parts of the process. Like you could think Jupiter, the materials manifest, people in your life maybe come around that you can ask for help or whatever, or get them to do different parts of it, or different opportunities you can take to help get to your dream, make your idea be realized, or it's not really your idea, but the idea you're holding. So that's through Mercury. Now let's continue on with Moon. Moon is interesting, and now it occurs to me because I was thinking that Bardo is, because I've been thinking that we go to different planets when we dream. Yeah, I used to think that Rahu was the location of Bardo, so we go to different planets when we dream. I was thinking that we went to the planet of Rahu. Basically, Vedically he's understood to be a giant head in the sky, and but this caused some sort of like, I was wondering about this because if literally the planet is a head in the sky, then is the maze of Bardo inside the head? Like, does he open his mouth and suck in the souls from that are hanging around, astral projecting, and as they're dreaming? That's kind of weird, and it doesn't really sit right with me in the sense that it doesn't sound accurate. Yeah, I'll bet you it's the moon, because I'm always dreaming in Bardo, and it sounds like most people are, and because moon is illusion as well.
Use well-controlled time bombs to destroy the internal systems.
It's his toy. So, I think it's the moon that we go to. That's Bardo, and then I think after, and that's where we mostly dream. But through different yogic practices, we can upgrade to go to Mercury or Venus or the Sun. I've only been to Mercury and the Sun in my dreams. So this is a new way to look at it. That's good. Yeah. So the moon is very much this energy of illusion. Some people I've seen written in some like forums and stuff that it's like delusion, especially from the Vedic standpoint. I think the word illusion is a little better than delusion in this case. It's the malleable nature of consciousness itself. Like, you think one thing, but the act of thinking something is actually morphing it. It's turning it into something else. But the moon can also give great insight. Moon's also comfort. This is one thing that's interesting to me, is how the planets are all facets of consciousness, while also being powers, gods that can bestow things to us, to the basically the magicians, to the devotees and magicians. I think being a magician is a little bit, in most cases, higher than being a devotee, because in a way you're being a devotee, but you're satisfying the point of being a devotee while being kind of like your own person. And there's some, religious argument against this sort of thinking that, that's being a magician, appeasing like gods and things like that, to get temporary power on Earth is heinous or something. I would say there's no reality except the reality that's before us. Some of that reality we can't see, but even so, the reality is before us. It's not, it's not some impossible thing which we can't touch, that is totally beyond the reach of even the highest in this lifetime. It's something that the rich and powerful, or anyone, can have access to, but But I think especially elite culture is the culture of getting into the stuff of if such people aren't magicians themselves, they hire magicians. Like even publicly now, it's known that big tycoons and whatnot will hire like astrologers and stuff. I heard some talk a while ago that like the CIA, they have MK Ultra and stuff like that for astral projection and things, but I heard some talk as if there's some group that basically they pay to manifest like a particular future. So I thought that was really interesting. Anyways, the planets are really relevant to this thing because planetary magic is like where you start to see those more immediate gains. Also, as far as the moon, I think the moon's interesting because it's sort of, the moon's this planet that it's sort of like the identity of the sun, but it's sort of inverted, or it's a bit of a darker identity. It's also very intrinsic to existence, but in a different way than the sun. It almost has it's mind, but it's sort of consciousness rather than like intellect as Mercury is. But it's similar to Mercury in the way that it alchemizes, and it's similar to Venus in the way that it manifests. So I'm not exactly sure what the full, what the most comprehensive description of the moon, what its powers are and everything. I don't know what the most comprehensive way to describe it is, in short. But it has a lot of facets. I've also had a feeling that the moon, focusing a lot of my spirituality on the moon, has been a little bit like a Mario world shortcut of like world canon shortcut of jumping straight to Saturn. I felt that I was focusing on the moon and then I was led to Saturn. So I think perhaps it's like everyone goes through the moon, everyone goes through Bardo, but after Bardo, you will go on to the sun, you'll go on to Mercury, but if you traverse Bardo correctly, you'll go to Saturn instead. So my spirits have been basically impressing this upon me through imagery, basically they've been telling it to me more visually, and it's the way my spiritual journey went, so I thought that was very interesting. I don't know if that works going downwards, though. I don't know if then Saturn is also a portal to Moon. But it's also very interesting because in some UFO lore, especially Inter Christos, the Inter Christos people talk like Saturn and Moon is this villainous system that's been set up by, the Anunnaki or something. I don't like the way they use the word Anunnaki. I think it's just straight up wrong. But I think they are right about some things, and perhaps this is one of them. Still, maybe I'm one of the bad guys because I like Moon and Saturn. And then, of course, through Malkuth. Malkuth is the realized, manifested, physical world. So, yeah. Perhaps mind is, perhaps Moon is the mental vehicle, the mental self that navigates the rest of the Sephirot. Thinking about it for a moment, it's interesting because I've always found that I always thought Bardo was on Saturn. That was the sense I got, or rather, there's like a misty Bardo that I thought was Rahu, but I think now is the Moon. And then I saw, when I would look at Saturn through astral projection, it looked very similar. It was just much darker, but it wasn't foggy like that. You could see, basically. So I bet the maze just goes in between, perhaps very fluidly, like you go through one hallway and you're in Saturn, and then you go down some stairwell and you're back on the moon. They're very connected. This also explains how through the mind one can traverse the entire Sephirot with ease. I bet the Inner Christos people are onto something about the Saturn-Moon connection. Now, does that mean it's a negative thing? I don't know. I think they're a little bit negative about, you know, the situation of the Earth. Certainly there's some bad turns going on down here, but the way it's explained by the Inner Christos people is borders on silly some of the time. But yeah, just to tie it all together now. So like Keter or Neptune is just the very beginning of an idea or an impulse. That idea or impulse expands itself, Uranus, through Uranus, and then it defines itself through Bina or Saturn. So it's like the idea expands naturally, and then it kind of gets detailed. And I think it takes some mental work to detail it, to add detail to it, to expand it into detail rather than just conceptual expansion. It's a detailed expansion. And then Jupiter, once the the high triangle seed is completed, then the manifestation of different needed components energetically can come about, and just large manifestations, people that can help, bigger resources and whatnot. Basically the cosmic help, the teacher that's going to teach you how to make your dream, the sort of divine sanction on it in a way, the help of the angels. It can be like that. Maybe this explains too why at times I'd be stuck in Keter and Uranus, in Neptune and Uranus, and then when it came to Saturn, it was like I wasn't adding detail, and so I was having all kinds of trouble. Saturn controls the lower being, so maybe it's like the lower beings will basically torture you until you get organized. That's an interesting one. See, this is the power of the Tree of Life that I've come to appreciate. I used to think it was dumb, but I just didn't understand Kabbalah. It wasn't opening to me. It didn't open to me till I learned like planetary magic through like Shakta type information, type teachings. So, crossing the abyss from idea to realized, or to at least partially manifested, from Saturn to Jupiter. I mentioned what Jupiter does. Mars and Sun is like the work of it. You could view both of those as work. It's the impulse to work, the work itself, crystallizing it, building it, building the project. Venus is then manifestation. I'm getting that you can view Venus and Mercury as finishing touches. Venus is cosmetics and Mercury is like, I'm getting Mercury too, even marketing, like, you could view them both even that way. But it's the things after the thing is already completed, and then I'm not sure where Moon fits in this process. I'm not sure. I'm getting that it's not that it's maybe a hurdle or something. So maybe it is like the moon is a negative thing in our world because which this is part of the connection with Bardo too, but I'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, if anyone has some idea of what moon is in the creative process, I'd be very interested to hear it in this downgoing system, if someone has something to add to what Astaroth had to say. And then Malkuth, the kingdom, Earth, is the thing, exists, it's a thing now, it's a matter of fact. Okay, just to follow that tangent about the moon, one last thing I wanted to mention is that the grays, a lot of UFOs are seen going into the moon, and a lot of people talk about negative ETs having a moon base. I've also seen the grays in Bardo, so I didn't know. I also wondered if Bardo was within the world, if when you're in Bardo you're actually in the underworld. I wasn't sure, but you know, this makes me wonder if the moon, so if the moon is home to Bardo, and basically the negative ETs, quote unquote, so-called, all basically have their evil lair in the moon, it would just connect a lot of dots really nicely. It also means probably when you see the light when you die, it's the light of the moon, that the moon is more luminous on the astral plane or something, which is also really interesting. Maybe that's also why Crowley, why Thelema is solar, is by concentrating on the sun. Perhaps that offsets the humanity's enslavement to the moon. So that's a weird one, because it says in the Bible the mark of the beast is 666. 666 is Tiferet, her son. And people are ruled by their egos and they just can't get past it. This brings up a lot of questions, because you can see in someone's birth chart whether the sun or moon is more dominant. That can tell you a lot about a person and their what they are behind the veil, what their like spiritual team is, things like that. So, okay, that's as far as I can go without just getting deep into deep speculation, talking about things that right now I've been talking about things that are basically corroborated by my study. The consensus of some people who are, and you know, speaking in the occult, in occult circles, whether that's New Age or whatever, you know, ones that I feel are relatively legitimate, and you know, also aligns with my experience. So going past that, it's more like thought experimenting, and I think that's not really under the scope of this talk. Now, I feel like it's worth mentioning that a lot of good manifestations came around the making of this video, and I feel very strongly that Astaroth is rewarding me for recording this, or I shouldn't say video. It's just audio right now, but so I learned something, because today we were sitting around, or well, I came in, my ex was sitting down, and she said she wanted to go to McDonald's, and I was like, oh, maybe we can go to McDonald's, you know, later in the weekend, because it's nicer to go on Sunday, or you know, this Monday we have holiday, so days when the stores are closed, it's nicer to go and get a restaurant, go to the restaurant typically, because otherwise we kind of get cabin fever, because there's like nothing to do and no one is, you know, people basically evacuate the city on the weekends. That being said, This time I said I kind of dissuaded her from us going to the restaurant, and then I felt like I'd done the wrong. I felt this nagging, like, no, this was wrong. We should reward ourselves because, like, today I did some work on animation. It was very good work. You know, it was a good thing. It was energetically very good. It was a good movement. I was pushing the movement forward, and when I came in earlier, she was in the middle of work that she was doing really intensely. So I felt like, you know, maybe it's okay to, and in fact very constructive to reward ourselves for working and for getting kind of in our niche and pushing and doing the things that fulfill us. For putting in the efforts, for showing up, basically. And so then I said, you know what, I said this to her, I said, I'm probably just being negative. You know, maybe we deserve a treat today. And she was like kind of waffling back and forth, or yeah, I think the word's waffling at the term, because I had succeeded in dissuading her.
All right, troopers.
And so finally we decided, no, yeah, let's go to the restaurant. And then we went and we got food and stuff. I just felt like, you know, when you treat yourself, because if you treat yourself and there's no reason, you just were hungry and wanted something to comfort yourself, usually that ushers in more like lack. It ushers in problems. Because you're spending energy, basically. That's what you're doing when you're spending money. You're spending your life force. The money is an image of the life force. But like if you did something and you're proud of it, you know, if you built up your life force, and you reward yourself for that, you get yourself a treat. You know, take care of yourself. That can inflate. I've talked about this before, but that can inflate the good thing that you did. That can inflate your efforts, basically. It can manifest the thing you put your efforts towards to expand, because you're appreciating it. The treat is almost ceremonially appreciating your own work, especially if you have your work in mind while you're doing the treat. And it doesn't have to be at the forefront of your thinking, but just in the back of your mind, you're like, yes, this is a reward because I did good today. And I think it was interesting because one of the reasons that she was waffling on it was like, she was like thinking, okay, I didn't push myself or force myself to do something, I just did what I feel like I needed to do today. I did what made me feel good, but also, you know, was productive. But I didn't, you know, I got this idea that I need to like push myself in order for it to be work. And I had the same thing, so it was very relatable. But I felt that sort of confirmed even more we should treat ourselves. So we did, and then we came home. It was a wonderful time. My son had a nice time. You know, we were riding on bikes and stuff, and I got to make segments of other audio. I made other audio segments about other topics. It was just really nice, and it was so in that way it was even expansive, because doing this is expansive for me. It's really helped me grow mentally and spiritually. There's a lot for me that was really stagnant, but now I'm using my voice. It's healing me. It's through the instrument of my words, of my voice. I can heal myself. And also I can just hear myself talk. Like, I watch my own videos, I can hear myself talk, I can hear my own ideas, and then I can think and iterate on my own ideas. And I think this is something as we think that we're really smart and special when we're just in our own heads. But like when you're conversing, but see, for me, even conversing isn't as sweet as this, because I can't hear myself. I'm just, a lot of my talk is like free association. It's like, you know, I'm very acclimated to what different types of information taste like. I'm using that as a metaphor, what it tastes like. And I speak in that way. Of course, I have a logical side as well, which is sort of moderating and grading all of this, grading and grading. You know, so I'm very careful. I'm very conscious of what I'm doing with my own consciousness, with my own mind, with my energy body. But it's almost like everything I say is somewhat has a shamanic value of it, to the point where I don't even, there's almost a level to which I don't even hear what I'm saying. And so, you know, I can peruse my own YouTube channel and find some topic that, you know, and listen to it. I haven't listened to my own stuff as much lately, but especially when I first started, I listened to my stuff, you know, 3-4 times just in the process of making it, because I guess I was nervous or something. Probably I'll have to be listening to my own stuff more now, but just the process of listening to my own ideas, you know, receiving it entirely. I'm not having a conversation with someone. I'm not, you know, just speaking into the empty room to hear my own voice. Like, I'm hearing it after when I'm not even thinking about the topic, and that can cause a kind of iteration for myself that's really powerful. So I think it's interesting to think that the decision to go and treat ourselves actually led to me being able to film myself through production like this. Because sometimes I just simply don't have time and ideas slip away. Because I'm able to capture so many ideas now by doing this, I'm a little less precious about every little idea, because the more you capture ideas, the more ideas come. This experience now reminds me a lot of dream work, because I'd have a dream, and then I'd wake up, and I could write 20 pages on what I remembered from my dreams. And the more you write, so like when you get to the point where you can write about 10-20 pages on your dreams, you're getting to the point where you're writing and you're remembering more as you're writing, like a fog is being lifted and more memory is surfacing. It's a really powerful, like, searching of your own mind. Perhaps this is how I managed to basically navigate the sphere of the moon of Yesod, and basically get the benefit of the doubt, or the benefit, cover the downside of Bardo, to sort of make Bardo, the moon, a good thing for me, instead of just maybe a little bit of a problem spot. I don't know. This is now I'm gonna have to focus on the moon again and try and penetrate it, and I think it'll open itself to me this time in a different way. I think me even thinking about it is a little bit the moon, throwing a hint at me, trying to reach out to me. So, who knows though? Maybe maybe I'll find some adversaries on the moon. Anyways, back to the restaurant. So we came back, and we all had a great time, and my son was so happy. And when the child is happy, that's your internal energy. So you need to keep an eye on your child. And like for example, a lot of people think they need to suffer and focus on their child because they're like afraid of parenting. But if you're happy, your child will be happy. You know what I mean? Like, you still have to care about your child, but understand that your child's not going to be happy if you're not happy, because the child is reflecting your inner self. It's some internalness of you. So of course, treat your child well. Don't be like you know, completely self-absorbed asshole that doesn't take care, that neglects their child, but, you know, understand that the key thing is the child, like a pet. Like, if you're upset, if a person is upset all the time, their pets will be their pets will have kind of a difficult temperament a lot of times. You know, it's kind of like that, but with children, it's more powerful than that, because it literally is it is your seed. You know what I mean? It is this internal thing of you, literally. You know, I think that's super cool. So another really good manifestation out of this thing, and of course, when people are happy, it brings good things. And that's something people miss. People get wrapped up in the details or practicality, but if people are excited, people are interested, people are talking, people are happy, you know, that starts the manifestation engine in a good way. That can start an up spiral. That starts the good things. That opens the doors to divine energy, basically, to, you know, manifestation, as it were. And then we came home, and my son started playing with his friend, and my ex went over to the neighbor's place, and they gave her like 2 whole platters of goodies. There's these really complex sweets made by one of the neighbor's parents, one of the grandparents, and you know, I'm just looking at this tray, and I you know, this kind of thing has happened enough times that I wasn't really in disbelief at it or anything. Like, I wasn't really shocked, but it was a really cool confirmation of like, okay, you know, I'm doing this thing that I'm making right now is a little more powerful, because I was about halfway through. This is something important that I need to focus on and maybe listen to in the future. You know, really powerful stuff, really powerful. And I think there's another thing, I think as a magician especially, just starting out, it's easy to miss the power of the little things. And I think sometimes appreciating the power of the little things can expand the little things. So, you know, it's not, oh, they had an extra candy bar and they gave my ex one. You know, that would be like level 1. But you know, it's not about how much you can suck out of people or anything, but it's an interesting manifestation. That's really what it is. And it's funny too, because yesterday I was we were doing this event with the other families here, and you know, I was doing a lot of labor for it, and I was carrying chairs back and forth. I made coffee up here on the 3rd floor, and I came down. I was talking about how helping hit the party and bringing coffee and everything was really like serving the community. And, you know, I thought that was, at first I was kind of like, because I was just going to get coffee for myself, and then my ex offered it to our neighbors, and at first I was kind of like, just for a fraction of a second, I was like, you know, I just wanted to go up, and, you know, I'd kind of pushed it yesterday when this happened. So, you know, I was a bit tired, but then I thought, you know, it'd be nice to bring down coffee for everyone. Sometimes it's like people give us stuff, and for a while, like, we wouldn't give much back, and I think there'd be no reason for me or her or, you know, us to expect ourselves to be giving back at the time, you know. But I think now it's nice to give back, and I think sometimes you get in your head that, oh, I have nothing to give or something, and then giving is very, very healing, because it can give you a chance to be a giver, which expands your life force, you know. And this is a really complex thing. At the same time, it's not complex. It's a basic fact of You know, you give, and through that giving, you know, what goes around comes around, but it's more immediate than that. And I think this scenario proves that it's very immediate. You know, but if you're at a huge deficit, if you've been kind of mooching for a long time or something, it can take a while to give, and to give with the right intentions, you know, and to then receive. And you know, it's also not about giving to receive. If you give, so you know, giving without bitterness is one thing, and then the next level is like giving just to give. And the more purified the giving is, the more that it the more powerful it is, the more you can bring harmony into your life through giving, and that harmony to some extent is the manifestation through which you receive. And this is very Kabbalistic. This is like Imuna, I think it's called. I haven't read this about it for a while, but it just came through to me once again, free association. You know, because I went up to make this coffee, and I thought, you know, Saturn, I can give this, and this is something I can give. I can give the coffee. The coffee is black like Saturn. You know, and I want to say here that okay, it's black. It's not such a strong. It's a connection to Saturn. It's not to get hype over it. That's the thing. You having these you know, rapid meditations about these things, and looking at the world with curiosity, with interest to see these patterns. You know, it's not to get hype over it, or to, you know, perhaps the connection between Saturn and coffee in this case is you know, completely wrong, but I think grappling with the reality through the symbolism of the planets, of the, you know, through all these concepts, can be very powerful, and can it kind of starts the flywheel of becoming, basically. Because the more you meditate on these things, you're putting energy into it. You're being devoted to it, and in a way subtly worshiping, and that's powerful. Maybe venerating more than worship. I think worship can be a lot of things. I like the term worship. Appreciate. You know, you're increasing the power of something by giving it space in your mind. You know, and by letting it be your teacher, and walking with it, and you're actually expanding the thing a little bit. So, you know, I felt that it was a very powerful thing just to simply bring this coffee down. So I think that was involved too. But you know, just lately, I've had a large change in consciousness, and yeah, it's very nice, but it's very circumstantial. You know what I mean? Like, it's not my inner consciousness, it's like outer consciousness of the manifestation of things. And, you know, it's a matter of knowing what to do, because a lot of the times in the past I was tired, you know. I wasn't able to hold energy. So cleaning out my liver now, I don't need to be in a sort of a survival mode anymore. I let go of some of this stuck energy in my energy body, and now I'm sort of like free. So, you know, and now I can feel how I'm holding energy. I can do projects, I can finish things, I can make more use of my time. In the past, 3 hours would pass and I would be like, shit, I didn't get anything done. Literally, by cleaning out my liver, literally the time passes slower. Literally 3 hours feels like 3 hours instead of before, you know, okay, I had the time, but like, I just didn't have the energy to really use it. And so, you know, like my ex would criticize me that I'm addicted to my phone, but it didn't have to do with, you know, an addiction to content or anything. It's more like, you know, literally I didn't have the energy to use my time because my liver, the psychic battery of my body was you know, was sort of clogged or was impinged somehow. So, and maybe it's not as much to talk about my liver, but actually my spine. Because what I originally did that sort of started all this was I let go of like 3 vertebrae of my spine. I was able to relax them just by concentrating on them, and that's what helped. You know, I immediately had to go shit, and my shits were irregular for like 2-3 days. Really, I think I'm still, you know, releasing some stuff, and when I finished working on one project, the debate, editing the debate, I felt such a surge of power from my you know, my midsection, from my liver, and you know, so yeah, it's interesting to track some of the manifestations of this work I did, of this you know, energy work, this that I've been doing with concentrating on my occult spinal centers. I'm sort of inferring based on something I read from Yogananda Paramahansa. So yeah, and it's interesting too because the vertebrae of the spine to some extent relate to the chakras, or you know, at least like each vertebrae is an energy center. It's not, you know, it's not that each vertebrae is a chakra, but each vertebrae is a fairly major energy center, and that sort of connects to I feel that the spine and the chakras and the tree of life are somewhat connected. I don't think it's one-to-one. You know, I've heard things said like to climb up the vertebrae of the spine like Jacob's ladder and get to enlightenment. I haven't experienced that. I think it's an interesting metaphor, but I think it's not 100%, and I don't like saying things that don't really jive with my experience that much and aren't 100%. Like, sometimes, you know, I mean, what does it mean if, you know, if there's only a few vertebrae of blockage, you know, somewhere in the middle, and once you clear that, the circuit closes, and you know, you get to a higher level, and then you're operating at a higher level, but even that higher level has some impedance in another vertebrae that's blocking the next level, and then you go to that vertebrae and you clear it, and then it's the next level, and so you know, so then maybe the whole spine is engaged at every level of the Sephirot you are. But see, that's the thing, is that there's kind of a lot of ways to look at this. Like, some people say you need to go up the tree of life. Some people recommend going down the chakras. Yeah, some people recommend going up the chakras and up the tree of life. Some people recommend going down the chakras, energy outside. That's like inner Christos, which I bulk at that a little bit because it sounds like, you know, as if you're downloading a lot of information into your energy body, and a lot of those people act kind of weird, which makes me wonder. Like, they act weird in the sense that I wonder if they've been basically, their souls have been reprogrammed to some extent or something. I don't know. I see that with certain religious traditions where I don't see people becoming more of themselves. I see people becoming like something. I'm not sure what that thing is exactly, or, you know, and they all sort of act similar, so they're not promoted to be themselves. They're promoted to be, or demoted to be, you know, a pre-existing template. And I don't know if that's even better than being just asleep. I don't know. I would suppose it's better than being asleep. I mean, in some ways, it's like I was born awake. And a lot of people are, I think.
As strong as the creatures that inhabit
So I guess I wanted to offer some.
rely on your speed. Try again.
What's the word? I wanted to offer some explanations, some
Speed and agility.
different things I've seen to kind of round it out instead of just using one aphorism that may or may not be complete and passing it on because it sounds good. Like for me, because I've heard also that you go up the spine to the crown and then you come back down. I've experienced that, and I heard it after I experienced it. I have experienced that, but I've experienced going up and down and up again and down again. I've gone a back and forth a ton. So, and it's kind of given me the sense too that it's not all about,
Remember,
it's not all about like blockages. Sometimes it's just a matter of
the core of your offense.
getting the chakras to hold more energy or something like actually as if learning a skill, like teaching a chakra skill, like your hands play the guitar, your mouth plays the harmonica. Each of the chakras can in the same way learn different skills, perhaps. So something like that. That's like a metaphor, but I think it comes close to explaining how weird some of this stuff actually is.
It is time
And
for
sort of
you to wake up.
the amount of nuance and craziness goes into it. So I also wanted to mention, a lot of times I talked about some of the manifestations, and it's like when I talk to people in person about manifestations, what do they always say? They say, oh no, well that was just X. Oh well, that was just Y. That was just Z. Oh, the neighbor gave the cookies just because the grandma gave it to them, and they had so much extra, and if they wouldn't give it to us, it would just go bad, and blah 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 blah. But I mean, they got a lot extra food compared to some other occasions when they've gotten food from the grandparents. On this occasion, that within itself is really interesting, and I think people really try to negate the magical nature of reality, and they're not doing themselves a favor by doing it. They're just, what I mean? It's that negativity is in some way defeating the divine energy, and it will cause problems for them. If you don't know about these things, you don't know about them. But if you deny them, it can thrust you into trouble. Okay, it's good to be judicious, but I think it's also good to listen. But the point that I do want to make here is that okay, there's material reasons for things, but these ethereal reasons are a superior cause. So I think this is another thing that people get wrong, is that magic isn't, and this is something I got wrong at the very beginning too, is that magic isn't always a replacement cause. In fact, it's not even often a replacement cause. Like, okay, when I was at the beginning and I was doing a lot of astral projection and dream work and energy work, yeah, I could directly manipulate my body. I could directly manipulate my health, and there was only a magical cause. There wasn't a physical cause that I was manifesting. Now, of course, with concentrating on the vertebrae of my spine, it's practically the same thing. It's a logical continuation of my work I was doing then, like 4 or 5 years ago. But maybe 6 years ago.
I needed that.
Been doing this for a long time. So, but like, a lot of things you can track where it comes from. You know, you can track what gods you may have pissed off. You can track what what gods you pleased, or that are showering things on you. And if your mind is open, if your heart is open, but you do have some critical faculty, if you have one hand held open and one hand holding the sword of discrimination, of intellect, that's the way to go about it. But yeah, it's not that magic is replacing the physical phenomenon that magic is just forcing someone to do something. It's harmonizing the matter to you. In this case, I didn't manifest this. Astaroth manifested this, or rather, I manifested it by pleasing Astaroth, who sent these things my way. So that's sort of the more common power of being involved in magic and doing some of this work, is that why is a creative person able to come up with ideas, execute? Well, like, imagine or think about musicians who get on stage and they sing and they just keep going and going, and they have all this energy because they're connecting to the divine through their work. A musician, whether they are a magician or not, explicitly, in a sense, in a subtle way, to make songs, to put pen to paper, to write even, is to perform magic.
I'd rather keep my skin on.
So there's just a lot to this sort of thing, and the occult is an investigation into some of these more subtle, fringe things that tell us why certain things happen. Like, why is giving causing receiving? Why is there that relationship? And it's particular, and there's a consciousness element to it, but why does this happen? Isn't it, if we're in just a materialistic world, then chaotically sometimes things are given, sometimes things are received by one. So we can all see these relationships, or at least I suppose most people can see these relationships. What do we make of them? What is the true meaning behind them? And I think too often it's easy to get caught up in simplistic explanations, in being in awe of some passing similarities, and not taking up a rigorous investigation and interrogation of the nature. That's the occult I'm talking about. I'm not a huge reader. I haven't read all the works of Crowley or Levi or Pike, or I'm not super well read on it, but I am engaging in this investigation. I am engaging in the work. I am working. I am active in it. I'm very active in it, and that's the point of it, and that's the benefit of it. That's the why. So